Hello, this is Quinn, and I am pumped to be talking to you today. Gosh, what a great life adventure this is, right? Where we get to do crazy things like record podcasts and connect with people all over the world. I just love it. So I hope that you are well, and I hope this finds you in a space of peace and connection. And also, if it hasn't, I hope that this feels like a safe space for you where you can reclaim and refine that space of connection and peace and intentionality that you might be looking for that could really support your life. So, as I mentioned in the last episode, I'm shifting things up a little bit more. I want this podcast to be a lot more story based. And so I myself want to share more of my own stories and be more sharing behind the scenes of what it actually looks like to be in the practice of living in flow and on fire, of living intentionally and creating intentionally, and all the pitfalls and struggles as well as the wins that are coming from that, because I believe we already have tons of information out there. You don't need more tips and tricks of how to do it, but maybe in hearing each other's stories, as I have often found, and I hope you might find as well, I often find the inspiration and the spark that I need to be able to then make those brave choices in my own life. And so that's the intention of how we're going to be shifting the content of the podcast moving forward. And I'll also be bringing on some epic guests who will be sharing their own stories, and we'll be talking through what this looks like for them of living intentional lives of meaning and being brave with their lives, and all that goodness, making the world a better place. I don't know, one day at a time, making our own worlds a better place, all that good stuff. So that's what's to come. I wanted to kind of close the loop though, because there is a lot that I'm just eager to just get in and say, okay, here's what I've been working on this week, and this has been so cool, and this is the breakthrough. And I think that that's really going to be valuable, and I want to start doing that actually with next week's show. But in the meantime, I do feel like it's important to give you some context about my story, because my story is, I'm recognizing the more that I've been out in the world and talking to lots of people over the years, it's not a very common story, and it definitely shapes my perspective and the context from which I'm viewing the world. And so if you missed last week's episode, definitely be sure to listen to that prior, because I think that will give you a lot of good context for where we're going to go today, which is more sharing the recent part of the story. And last week's covered more of like the past part of the story, and there's good stuff in each. So let's dive in without further ado. I wanted to share, because this has been such a game-changing experience for myself, for my life, that I lost my job in May. I was so loving my job prior to that. As you may have heard, or if this is your first episode, I'll just recap quickly. So I had my own business for 16 years and loved that, had a lot of incredible experiences and worked with a lot of incredible people throughout that time and companies, and was in the marketing and branding space. And then I shut down my business, and I was hired on to be an executive at a major marketing agency, and then became their chief marketing officer, a CMO, and led the sales and marketing team. And I was head over heels in love with this company and their vision and mission. It was like I had reached the promised land in so many ways. And so any of my dreams about being an artist and doing that kind of thing, I kind of was just letting slip to the slide. I slipped to the slide or the side, where I was still doing art for the fun of it and on weekends and sometimes after work, but I was mostly just devoting myself with heart and soul and everything in me to this job that I really loved and got a lot of value and fulfillment in. And I, in this process, became very, very good friends with the founder and the CEO. And it was, I believed they were my best friends, even. Like I was just feeling grateful every week, if not every day, for such incredible people in my life that were so inspiring to me, that felt like true friends, and that we were creating just really cool stuff together in this company. And I loved the company that I worked with, my incredible department that I was able to lead, of the sales and marketing team, just full of the most beautiful humans. I loved it. I loved I can't emphasize that enough. If you're wondering, I loved it. And so this was like, I was going to hang my hat here. My plan was, maybe someday I'll do art. That'll be cool. And meanwhile, I am going to just stay here and work until I retire because it was that fulfilling and that rewarding. And I loved their vision so much. And there were a whole other slew of thoughts and beliefs around if I could even do art or do my own thing on that level as like an artist. And so I was kind of like, well, this is safer and I can for sure see how it will work. It will be amazing. And I love these people. And so it's going to be incredible. I'm definitely going to stick with it. And so with making that plan, I ended up bringing over all of the employees from my company so that they were all now employees of the marketing agency that I was now a part of. And there was a lot of cool and good things about that as well. I loved working with them. Everybody on my team that's ever worked at Sequoia, I've just been so lucky and or really intentional and have chosen some really beautiful souls to work with. And so it was a treat to get to work with them. So we have this big, happy family. Everything is amazing. And then in January, in what was kind of a surprise, but not necessarily due to some of the things that were going on. In hindsight now, I realize it should have been more a surprise. The COO was let go. And he had been there for 9 years or something like that. It really helped grow and build that company. And he was given 1 week to transition out of his role and then find something else and a generous severance. And it was, supposed to be great after that transition happened. And then a month or two after that, then the CFO, who was also one of my good friends, was let go due to some errors and things that had happened, and which I won't say here or there that I agree with that, but at the time I was like, oh, okay, makes sense. Maybe, I guess, I hope so. I trust you, CEO who's making the decisions. And so the CFO was let go, given a week to transition. And so I was just humming along and working on building things up within what I was working on. When I stepped into this role, there was a ton of stuff. It was kind of like how the cobbler's house has no shoes. It was that kind of a situation in the marketing and sales department where it was like, we're a marketing company by and large, but our own marketing and brand has really suffered. So there was a ton of work, a ton of rebuilding that needed to happen to get things really rocking there again. And so I had a ton to do and I was working on that. But I also had this sense due to some of the comments that were made that maybe the CEO and or founder didn't fully understand everything, but nor were they asking a lot of questions and trying to understand per se. And so there was a little situation and it escalated very quickly, even though I tried to work it out in a very, very professional way of getting HR involved and seeing what we could do, and ended up completely shocked as on a Monday morning, I was told, oh, yes, like we've heard that your request for HR, so we'll meet with you as HR at 9:00, and then showing up to that meeting with HR and actually getting fired. So it was like fired by my best friend, by the way, who had just days before told me how grateful she was for me, how much she loved working with me, and how she could see all the value that I was providing, and then just out of the blue fired me. So it was like a traumatic shock. It wasn't just like, oh, that's unfortunate, I'll go find something else. It was betrayal is what it felt like. It felt absolutely awful, like so much pain. And to make matters even worse, I still don't know why they made this decision. And I'm just still not feeling safe or ready to talk to the CEO, but to find out why they did this, because I'm ready to move on also. And I don't feel like it matters per se. But while the other executives had been given a week to transition, I was not even given any time to transition. It was just, I showed up for that call and was fired immediately, blocked access immediately, as if I had done something wrong in the company. And just for those of you who are listening, who are in business or who work in corporate America or anything like that, as I've talked to my HR friends who work in major companies, they just say everything of how this was handled was like the textbook of what not to do in this situation. And so it really was not at all, nothing about it was done very professionally at all. And so I, like, overnight, everything changed. My role changed, my like projection for where my life was going changed, my friend group changed, the people that I thought I could trust and thought cared for me and that I knew. It was like I don't know you anymore. You're not the people that I thought you were. And it was just crazy painful. And especially for it to happen so abrupt, it was like everybody just went back to work like right after this happened. And I was just out on my own. And thankfully I was given a generous severance, which helped so much because I was in such shock that I hit lower lows than I have hit in maybe any part of my life. And as part of those lows, something that was really, really apparent to me as I have been like really working on this is just this space of what I would now call nihilism or define as nihilism, which is this space of where you've broken down and everything is just broken down so much around you that you're facing this space of what's the point of any of this? Maybe nothing matters. Like I don't matter. No one's looking out for us. Like this belief that maybe life is just meaningless. Like all these things that made sense to me, like that people are good, that my friends, I know them, I can trust them, that we're all on the same page, like that I'm, anything. It just all was like overnight gone. And so what I came to see now that I've been processing this a lot is that when I had left the structure of the religion that I was raised in, which was a high demand fundamentalist religion, slash a lot of people think that it is a cult, and I on any given day might agree with them, and just because of the way that maybe cult can be defined, I really do resonate with a lot of the ways of why people would think that this was a cult. But anyways, when I left that religion in 2015, it's not even been that long, only 8 years ago, at the time of this recording, I feel like I didn't feel the full brunt of that breakdown of all of those belief systems and the structures and the transition of, one day having this community and the next day not. I felt absolutely pain, and I've gone through a lot of mourning in that. I mean, when you make a change like that, especially, it can change your sense of family and community, even like your sense of, how to celebrate your holidays and like how to enjoy holidays. I like shifted to really struggling with Christmas, for example, let alone Easter. And so it's just, it really affected a lot of parts of my life, but I was okay through it. Like I could figure out how I could be okay. And so when this happened with my job, what I have come to see is that I kind of transferred that sense of worth, that sense of okayness, that sense of safety, and the value that I am and the value that I create onto my businesses and to just my career. And so then when that fell apart overnight in such a shocking way, my sense of self and worth were absolutely shattered in the process, and really brought on these very, very dark thoughts and dark demons to face within myself of just what's the point, what's the meaning behind all of this. And I just like could go along with, well, this is just your life path and it was meant to happen. And then I would like hear a little bit more about why this decision was made about my job, and it just like did not add up, did not sound logical, and nor even professional. And so I was just like, but there's humans at the helm, and humans are kind of silly and make mistakes and have interesting beliefs about things and don't always do things logically. So like, was this really what was meant to be? And so just trying to find meaning in what looked like, a shit sandwich, a big fat shit sandwich. And so I like what this brought on, and that Britt Hartley, who is a spiritual director that I highly recommend if you or somebody else is transitioning out of these types of beliefs and a religious perspective, and you're trying to find a more logical and healthy way of living your life and understanding what all of this is. She is such an incredible resource. You can find her on TikTok. She has 1 billion incredible videos and a crazy big following as a result of her creating just massive value in that space. I actually hired her to coach me to help me understand and detangle a lot of this, which made a huge difference. So she points out from her research, she's actually a scholar as well, and she points out that nihilism, this space of meaningless, usually comes from facing the 4 existential fears. The 4 existential fears are, first, of death, the finality of death, the unknown, the reality that we will either watch our loved ones die or they're going to watch us die. Meaningless, the absurdity of life and the potential that there isn't some overarching meaning to it all. With, an example being, how do we answer the question of suffering? Why is there still suffering in the world rationally, right? Like, why are women still being raped? Do we really believe that that's because it's just part of the plan and like it was just supposed to be for their life? I think on some level we could believe that and it can provide us comfort. And also, like, are we doing enough when we believe that type of thing to actually like change societal structures and ways of doing things so people stop getting raped, so children stop going hungry, so all of these systemic issues can actually get better? And so, that's part of why I bumped into some of these fears, actually all of them, is this belief that believing that this is just the way it's supposed to be, believing that some higher power or somebody outside of us is going to fix this, seems to keep creating the same thing. Like, we're still just struggling in a lot of the same ways. So the next existential fear being isolation, the possibility of being absolutely alone. There's no higher power or no one else that can ever truly understand what it's like to be us. So it's like this uncrossable chasm between us and another person, which I think is a major reason why loneliness is on the rise. And so many of us are feeling that. And so absolutely was facing this existential fear in my own path as everything was breaking down. And then the 4th existential fear is the fear of freedom. So the potential that we have potentially ultimate freedom of choice as to what to do with our lives. And there maybe isn't some higher power orchestrating or some plan guiding our lives, but that we're ultimately responsible for our own lives. And so there's a lot of good insights about all of these and where they come from. But within this space, I'll just share a little bit from Erich Fromm, who was a German Jewish philosopher who fled Nazi Germany and came to the United States. He wrote a book called Escape from Freedom, and he describes this fear as, freedom is a burden, not a gift. It's the responsibility of making one's own decisions, and it's often easier to let someone else do that for you. And so that quote is from this book where he argues that many people are afraid of freedom because it means having to take responsibility for their own lives, and they're afraid of making the wrong choices and afraid of the consequences of their actions. And he believed that this fear of freedom leads people to giving up their freedom and submitting to the authority of others, which he saw happening in Nazi Germany, where people were willing to give up their freedoms in exchange for the security of what appeared to be a really strong leader in Adolf Hitler. And so absolutely, we live in a world where people are just constantly bombarded with messages that tell us what to think and what to do and what to buy. And, it's important to be aware of those messages and to still retain our own autonomy and freedom. And coming from a marketing space and a brand strategy space where I have been really trying to shape things and shape messages in ways that people will, see, oh, this is going to solve a problem and I want to buy it. And then seeing so many like icky practices in marketing and in that whole digital marketing space, especially, that's like about manipulating people's feelings to get them to purchase something. It like really opened up a lot of this concern and made me look at all of this of just, looking at how much of the things that we're told we need and that are going to solve our problems that we just need to buy and, make it happen to make our lives better. So anyways, this led to this really dark place where I honestly and I'll just share it here in case somebody you know, or in case you are struggling with this. Like, I felt very hopeless and lost, and I really actually was contemplating suicide because I didn't know how to face my life and continue without a strong sense of meaning and purpose. And I thought that if I didn't find that, I would just be going through the motions until I died anyways. So why not just end it now? And why not make people's lives easier? And I realized when we talk about suicide on any level, it's a very sensitive topic. And I really believe if I hadn't had people in my life who were willing to talk about it and not just send me to a professional who is going to medicate it away or whatever they might do, like, I don't believe that I would still be here, because it took somebody being able to look at these really scary things that I could not reconcile in my mind to then be able to like understand what's going on and what choices I want to make by looking at all of these things. And so I definitely was in a space like Friedrich Nietzsche talks about when he has his famous quote of "God is dead, God remains dead, and we have killed him." And what he meant by that was more that the belief in the Christian God has become unbelievable. Everything that was built upon this faith or propped up by it, grown into it, including the whole of European morality and this Western society's morality, is destined for collapse. And his big concern was if we fail to vanquish and decisively replace the shadow of values derived from this higher power outside of us, we risk our culture as a whole slipping into a deep nihilism. So just like what I was experiencing on my own self with my own journey, and obviously, yes, on one frame, you could say, well, Quinn, you just lost your job. Like, it's not that big of a deal. You could get another job, no big deal, right? But like, life experiences can bump into these things for us where it fundamentally shakes up like how we see the world, what makes sense to us about how life works, what our place is in it as well. And so what I think is fascinating and why I want to share my stories, because I believe Nietzsche. Like, I see this happening where so many people, including so many that I know and see, like, because of believing in these powers outside of us or not quite being able to believe it, we don't know where to turn. We don't know how to face these existential fears fully, of like the fear of death, of isolation, of freedom and meaninglessness. And so then we just kind of keep trying to just go through the motions and figure things out. And so what I loved, what Britt pointed me to, was the work of French-Algerian philosopher and Nobel Prize winner Albert Camus. He had the concept that we have three options when we face the suffering of human life and the existence of the absurd, that like things just kind of don't make sense. And maybe we can't make meaning out of it all. And of all the things that we wish we knew in the world, and we wish we knew about if there's a God and a heaven and all these things, like, there's so little we can actually literally know for sure, that we have three options when we actually really allow ourselves to face this. And so, and by the way, what I think is really important is as you're hearing this, is to understand that there is this incredible level of freedom and sanity that comes when we actually face these questions. And like, when we are willing to be brave and look at them, gosh, it helps us so much to then live a more intentional life where we no longer have these things hanging over us, driving our decisions, but instead are able to live a life that's more intentional and in alignment with our values and what matters to us. And so the options that he said, which kind of, I guess, spoiler alert, what I was just sharing kind of relates to one of them. But he said the first option is to quit or suicide. And the question here is just, do you consent to life, or do you want to just escape the dilemma entirely? But one of the things that really helped me to stop contemplating this is that he taught that if you're trying to escape the suffering and ending it, like if that not being able to reconcile why there's just a lot of pain and suffering and struggle in the world, then you actually committing suicide would be adding to it. Because inevitably, if you chose that option, those who care about you would suffer, and it would make life harder on them when you're gone. And ultimately, committing suicide, at least if you're doing it for this reason, would be lying to yourself, because you're believing like it's not a real solution. You haven't actually solved it. You're just taking yourself out of trying to solve it because it feels unsolvable, which is actually where I found there are so many resources and tools and incredible support there to help us solve some of these things, or just help us reconcile it in our minds. So If you or somebody is struggling with that, like, let's give them more tools. Let's have more conversations instead of just, oh my gosh, something's wrong and that's so scary and so bad. And so let's keep a level head and let's show up to support. The second option he says we have is a philosophical suicide, which he calls the leap of faith, which is where we just pretend and like believe in something not real. So we believe we believe in something that isn't logical or truly supportive just to cope and survive. So this is where you have to turn off part of your brain or dismember parts of yourself to believe it, like turning off the logical part of your brain that's like, yeah, I guess, yeah, there is a higher power outside of me. There's this God and all this makes sense. Like when the logical part of your brain maybe is just not on board with that and can't get on board with that. Or for some of you, that might really work for you. It definitely wasn't working for me. And so it can, here again, be just a space of denial where you're saying, I don't understand, I don't know, but I can't face that, because if I face that, I'm going to freak out and lose it and, face this dark tunnel of nihilism, like what I was in for a couple months too. And so then the third option is to revolt and embrace the absurd condition of life and to live passionately in spite of it. So this space where we like realize that there's this collision between the seriousness with which we take our lives and the perpetual possibility of regarding everything about which we are serious as arbitrary and open to doubt, which that is quoting Nagel, actually. And if you're curious about like how to do this, the Kunk on Earth show on Netflix is a really bold and beautiful commentary about the absurdity of our human story and history thus far. There's incredible lines in it, like where they talk about, the space of once Christianity, when the Romans took over, they became Christians themselves and stopped killing the Christians to then like go and try to conquer other people to be Christians as well. And the other religions around at that time that were kind of doing similar things. There's just really great lines in there, like religion was supposed to unite humankind in harmony and bland smiling, but it had mainly succeeded in tearing it apart like a bear in a maternity ward. So like watching that show was incredibly supportive. Just helped me see like, okay, this is a crazy adventure, this earth life, and not all of it makes sense. Maybe it will never make sense, but what matters to me and how can I live in courage and like live passionately and embrace the absurdity of it and kind of revolt against just needing to have that philosophical suicide or take myself physically out of this experience, and how can I just enjoy it more? And so obviously in sharing this, I know that this is a very extreme version of what some people can be struggling with. But here again, I think that hearing some of those can be really, really helpful. Maybe my story is a little bit scary to you, where you're like, oh my gosh, I don't want to look at those things at all. And so I hope in sharing it, I can inspire you that like, God, it's worth it. I'm so glad I did. I'm so grateful I went through that and really faced those demons and those fears, because it's liberated me in a way that I feel my heart just opening up to life with gratitude and meaning and just, like it brings me to tears now when I experience human kindness, like something as simple as somebody just asking how you're doing, or thinking to invite you to something, or somebody, helping somebody else and you're watching it happen. Like it makes it so sweet. And it's changed like the flavor of my experience to be one that is so much more rich and with more depth, and has helped me to make more brave choices and live a lot more passionately. And obviously I'm still in that practice, and that's what we'll keep kind of talking about on the podcast. But I hope in sharing that, I want to share with you next time about like one of my favorite tools that I used as a really supportive tool to have a logical way of rebuilding some major scaffolding in my brain to help me be more sane and to find this way of doing life, which is an incredible resource. I cannot wait to share it with you. And so just, if you're in this space and or know somebody in this space, or if you're worried about facing this type of space within your own psyche, like my hope with this episode is like, have courage. You are strong. You're a badass. You can do this. And there's so much support around you, including myself. Please reach out if you're like, not sure where to turn or what to do, I highly recommend reaching out to Britt Hartley as well. But it's worth it to look at these things and to really realign and live your life from an intentional space, and to stop and question why it is that you're doing the things that you're doing. Why have you made these choices, so that you can make better choices that more support what you actually really want, not because you're afraid of punishment or judgment, or not being safe, or things going wrong if you don't, but purely because what your dreams in your heart and that goodness within you that wants to come out, it matters, and it makes the world a better place when you choose to listen. And my hope is that this will inspire you to look at some of those dark places, not be afraid of them, know that you can come out on the other side stronger, more free, and more full of love and compassion for the world around you and for yourself. So we'll keep talking about what this actually looks like, and I'm here to this is the beginning of the journey if you're interested in coming on this journey with me. And gosh, there's so many fun things I'm excited to share with you. So please have a blessed day, and just have fun with today too. Actually, let's just laugh at a little bit more, take ourselves less seriously, and have fun a little bit more with life today. Have an amazing time, and we'll talk soon. Bye.